Well, William, I'm going to start with you. We've just had Ben Houchen on the programme talking about how Boris Johnson is the answer, and he'd quite like to forget that the last few months ever happened. What do you make of this Boris Johnson bandwagon?
Well, I don't agree with it. I mean, Ben is a great mayor in the Tees Valley and in Teesside, but I didn't agree with that at all. I just heard the end of the discussion there. I think it would be a very, very bad idea to bring Boris Johnson back. The Conservative Party was doing pretty well until about 18 months ago as the government, considering all the problems facing the country. And then things have unraveled spectacularly, including with this disastrous latest 6 weeks. And this all started, this unraveling, because Boris Johnson was unable to run the government in the right way, to keep it together in the right way, and to uphold the high standards of conduct that are necessary in the highest offices in the land. That's how it all started. So the idea that him returning is the solution is really that would be going round in circles, and circles that could become a death spiral of the Conservative Party. And I think it's possibly the worst idea I've heard of in the 46 years I've been a member of the Conservative Party. There are good candidates for, obviously, as you probably recall, I supported Rishi Sunak before, and I will very loudly support him again. He would be the best prime minister, particularly in this situation.
Well, you took the words right out of my mouth. You said death spiral of the Conservative Party there. I was going to ask you, does Boris Johnson really pose an existential threat to your party, do you think?
Well, I think the situation of the party begins to pose an existential threat. Absolutely, because clearly Conservative MPs are finding it very difficult to unite. But I don't think they would be able to unite around a former leader who, remember, 50 or 60 ministers and parliamentary aides went to the extreme length of all resigning collectively in order to remove him.
So the party risks splitting if he returns?
Well, I don't know what exact form this death spiral I'm talking about would take, but it would be a spiral. And very difficult to pull it back together again. And clearly the party is very, very unpopular after what's happened over recent weeks. So that is going to need fresh leadership as well, and leadership that can actually deal confidently with a very difficult economic situation for the world and for all countries. And I think if you think of the prospect of we could have Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister and Jeremy Hunt as Chancellor. Now there you've got a team where financial markets would have confidence, and I think over time voters and people paying interest rates would be able to have confidence. And that would be the best solution to the current situation.
Angela Smith, let me bring you in here, because that last suggestion that William has painted of Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt, that's quite a powerful team, a team that has integrity, according to William just there, and many others who are backing Rishi Sunak. You must be quite worried about that prospect.
I'm worried about the future of the country at the moment. If you look what's happened over the last few months, particularly since the mini budget the last few weeks, so many people are worried, will they be able to afford their mortgage as it goes up hundreds of pounds a month? How do I pay for the weekly shop? My fuel charges have gone up, the rent's going up. And we're having this discussion about the future of the Conservative Party. We should be having a discussion about the future of the country. Now, the Conservative Party has really not done the country proud. And the idea that Boris Johnson thinks it's okay to return is a bit like, isn't it, returning to your lost love, only to find out all the reasons why you left them in the first place still exist.
But Boris Johnson is a winner. I mean, that was the point that Ben Houchen was making.
Well, that's an interesting point, isn't it? Because that's the debate I've had with other Conservatives. It isn't just about winning. It's what you do when you win. And I think William was quite right. Remember the reasons why Boris Johnson left. The reason he became so unpopular and lost the confidence of his parliamentary colleagues. He defended a colleague who was accused of sexual assault. He defended Owen Paterson when he was accused of breaking the rules. In Parliament, he tried to change the rules. And it just goes on, and the whole Partygate affair and the Downing Street parties, while other people were in lockdown at home.
Okay.
It gave us all a view that rules are not for Boris Johnson and for everybody else. So I think what I find very difficult is it's one thing about changing a prime minister after an election. To do it again and again when policies are changing so dramatically, to me, that has to be a time for a general election, because it has to be for the public to decide, not just a handful of members of the Conservative Party that are not representative of the country as a whole.
William, general election, I mean, it's beginning to, the pressure for that is really beginning to mount, isn't it?
Oh, I can understand the argument of that, of course, but particularly from opposition parties who would have the prospect of winning a general election. But here I return to Angela quite rightly made the point that what is important here is the interests of the country. Well, we just had the Chancellor has undoubtedly calmed the markets, is about to bring forward a financial statement that is due on the 31st of October. Would a general election be the right thing to do in these circumstances?
Yeah, but if it's Rishi Sunak, he has no mandate. Liz Truss didn't have a mandate. And, the Tory members are they are playing with all our futures here, aren't they?
Yeah, well, that argument, of course, goes back to all those previous changes of prime minister in previous governments, of Gordon Brown and so on, where policies have changed and people have changed. People can quite rightly say, well, this is a really extraordinary case of it that we've had in the last couple of months because of Liz Truss was such a change. And it turned out to be so disastrous, and that is a fair point to make. But if our objective is what is in the national interest, I believe the best national interest is a prime minister like Rishi Sunak, a chancellor like Jeremy Hunt, and for people to be able to judge that through the rest of the parliamentary term.
And Angela, you didn't answer my point on that. That is quite a winning combination, isn't it? Harder to beat.
I'm not convinced of that, because I think they've been part of the government for a very long time. They've been part of a lot of the decisions that have been made that took us to this point. Rishi Sunak resigned towards the end of Boris Johnson's premiership, but he was part of that team all along. My sense is that the Conservative Party generally now can't provide the stability the country needs, whoever the Prime Minister is. And it is one thing changing Prime Minister once, to do it again, and this contest that goes on and on. I just think whoever is Prime Minister, needs to have a mandate and the confidence of the public. And the only way that can be tested now is through a general election. It can be done relatively quickly, a lot quicker than a Conservative Party leadership when Liz Truss got elected. But I think the only way we're going to get stability now is if the public have their say, because, as you rightly say, there is quite a demand, including from quite a large number of Conservative voters. Now, Conservative MPs may not be so keen because they see the writing on the wall, but certainly Conservative voters that I've been speaking to, including Conservative Party members, are saying, come on, this is enough. We've got to put the country's interest first and not just the interest of the Conservative Party and hanging on to our own seats.
We don't need to make a forecast here. We actually know. We know what happened before when Boris was Prime Minister. And it was a tragedy that this happened, because he is a talented man who so many of us have liked and respected and supported over the years. But government was not run to the right standards, and the standards of government were not upheld properly. And there is this inquiry into whether he misled the House of Commons hanging over him. So this is not the way forward. It's absolutely not the way to solve the problems that have arisen.
When you look at Boris Johnson has 41 backers so far, do you just despair of your party that they're prepared to sort of, it's the definition of insanity, isn't it? Trying whatever failed the first time, to misquote Einstein.
It is meant to be, yes. And yes, I do. I'm not so amused to see MPs leaping in that direction. Note, however, that there are a lot more MPs so far backing Rishi Sunak than that, but we will see.
70 odd, which means Boris Johnson has quite a high chance of being on that final vote to put to the members, and he'd be backed then by the members, wouldn't he?
Doesn't it? Well, we'll see. I mean, the members will. Well, let's see. Let's not prejudge the members. The 43% of the members voted for Rishi last time, and many more of them have noticed that just about everything he said would happen if the wrong policies were pursued has happened.
They didn't get the choice of Boris Johnson last time.
Well, no, they didn't. So no, I'm in no way complacent about the result. Yes, absolutely, it could go the wrong way. And that's the importance, I think, of everybody in the Conservative Party making their views known, including the has-beens like me, the former leaders. And Michael Howard, another colleague and former leader, has said the same thing, that Boris Johnson had his chance and he blew it.
How extraordinary we're even having this conversation, really. It feels like we're in some kind of weird drama that should never have been allowed to happen. And I think if we can get to a period of stability, we just can't let a few members of the Conservative Party decide who runs the country now. It's got to be a time where the public can feel engaged and give support to a leader, because there's difficult times ahead, and we've got to have that stability and public support.
Well,